Hello, Rick here with another top 6, turning in my personal opinion, honed by at least 15 minutes of critical thinking, towards the Doctor Who series. In particular, with the new series looming on the horizon, with new designs to see, I thought I'd list my top picks for the design of the TARDIS. Well, when I say the TARDIS, I mean the Doctor's TARDIS, and the interior console room. I could do a list of outside designs, but in essence it boiled down to... I like the blue one. I mean, in all seriousness, no, I could do a list like that, but would anyone actually even be interested in that one? Anywho, with all that said and done, let's get on with my choices of interior decor.
You've redecorated.
Yes.
I don't like it.
At number 6, the classic Season 1 TARDIS design. Without this, no others would exist. It set up all the trends that would then follow, the roundels in the walls, the six-sided console in the middle of the room with the moving time rotor. Its iconic design was incredibly simple, out of necessity of budget and time constraints, but its simplistic nature provided little in the way of distraction. I always had the impression that the TARDIS was still fresh, uncluttered as of yet, as the Doctor had relatively recently, for his lifetime, stolen it from Gallifrey. The adventure was out there, beyond the doors of the TARDIS, and although the machine was a fantastical device of magical proportions, it wasn't yet a big focus of the Doctor's adventures. That would all come later. It's not higher up on my list because I think the clinical look was replicated better in later seasons, although it was shown to be more modular than later builds, as eventually a laboratory would occasionally be included just off the side of the main room. So, moving on to number 5. Paul McGann's role as the Doctor was of course the shortest and the longest. And this too carries over to his TARDIS, where the interior is shown only in the 1996 TV film. Whereas the first console room was sparsely decorated, the 7th to 8th Doctors was the complete opposite. It has been expanded to a much greater size, and the addition of a lot of furniture and creature comforts gave the impression that the Doctor was spending much more time in the TARDIS, at the helm, and simply idling in the time vortex. This would be a reflection of his personality, as when the film opens he's companionless, and nearing the natural end of his 7th incarnation. He seems in a sort of retirement, putting his feet up in a warmer, more home-like TARDIS. Also, I like the addition of stone and mortar in the design, something that seems very much out of place on a spaceship. At number 4, we have the secondary control room from Tom Baker's run. Technically not the main console room through which the TARDIS is usually flown, but more of a backup or alternative. It's got much less functionality than the primary room and was far more compact, but I've got to say, if I was designing a spaceship, it would have wood. The panels, I mean, to break up the monotony of the metal. It sits here on the list and no higher for the same reason though. There's kinda too much here. The Carpenters gone crazy. It's definitely memorable for its radically different design, and it matched the style of the show at the time, seeming like a study or a parlour. The console in the middle, alongside buttons and levers, also quite nicely had little hatches in which he'd store all sorts of odds and ends. And as a side note to everyone, try as I might, I can't remember why the Doctor began using this room rather than the primary. If anybody knows, let me know in the comments because it's going to bug me. At number 3, we've got another from the classic era, and Pertwee's design from season 8 onwards. It's incredibly similar to the classic first series design, but far more colourful in places, a touch here and there, with even nods back to the first console room, such as the addition of the transporter-looking fixtures. I'm not sure what they are exactly. This interior was also used during the first multi-Doctor story, The Three Doctors, which is where I saw it first, so there's a lot of positive memories associated with it.
Oh, so you're my replacements. A dandy and a clown.
The console itself was designed to look like a circuit board with banks of buttons aligned in silver mounts, connected by red electrical pathways, or traces. Well, that's the technical term for them. I googled it. Go me. Anyway, the end effect was that the console itself seemed, well, to me at least, like an exposed section of the TARDIS. It was like I was looking at a core component of the machine, and the Doctor himself would flit around, manipulating it as if he were an extension of the TARDIS itself. Plus, it was the first major redesign and introduced the idea that the TARDIS, like its obstinate pilot, was also ready to rework, rewire, redesign and regenerate into a new form. At number 2, we have the last of the classic era console rooms. This was the one I saw first, and lasted through 3 different doctors, presided over 2 regenerations, and to my mind, it's what I would expect to see when walking into a police telephone box. The general layout of the console room was similar to the original. The whites and greys of the room retained what I'd call Gallifreyan default. But elements here and there made it much more inviting than previous classic looks. Warming tones to the roundels and the light yellow lighting from the time rotor provided a more welcoming warmth to it. The console itself was the busiest it's ever been, with illuminated panels, banks of switches and buttons, dials and monitors. The whole thing invokes the idea of a mission control centre at NASA or some such. Colours here and there around the device, too, make it seem at the same time both complex as all hell but incredibly simple. Maybe it's just the fact that 8-year-old me saw this mess of colours and was all like, let me at it. But Peter Davison was also perhaps my favourite Doctor, and his look, his colour scheme, must have played a part in the design too, as others who took the helm didn't quite seem as at home in this interior. Subjective, I know, but looking back in comparison, it's like this was the first time the Doctor started to properly personalise the TARDIS. This design best captures the classic era Who aesthetic. Take a simple idea, throw in some twists, some sci-fi, add a splash of colour, and there you go, TARDIS. I missed the doors too, that old whirring noise they'd make when they opened, and I enjoyed how the aesthetic carried over to the rest of the TARDIS, or at least what we saw of it. And at number 1, Capaldis design. This one is awesome. The inside looks like a spaceship, but with so much going on. For a start, it looks lived in but functional, which is something I can't say for the 1996 one. Although very similar to 11's TARDIS, Capaldis looks warmer, which is strange considering his portrayal of the Doctor, but by simply changing the rotor from a harsh greeny blue to the inviting orange, adds a lot of comfort to the design. Repeating patterns on the walls also harken back to the roundels, and we even have a couple here, albeit illuminated ones. The time rotor itself has received a major upgrade too, with the rotating sections up the top making the TARDIS very much feel like it's active. It's actually doing things, there's power running through it like a dynamo or a computer. The hexagonal console itself looks like a flashier version of the traditional design, and we even have a couple of additional panels which I imagine are primarily status banks. The multi-levelled look of this control room too adds some nice depth to the interior, and whereas previous TARDISes all felt like their rooms were on the same floor, this one feels as if it has decks. I wasn't a fan of the vivid initial Matt Smith design. I found it too colourful and a little too vibrant. But one thing it did get right was the feel that the staircases and corridors actually led somewhere, which I'm glad to say this continued. But overall, what sets it off for me and gives it the edge over its previous iteration is the scholarly additions. The chalkboard, the armchair, the tables, and of course the books. Oh, so many books on the shelves on the floor, stacked on tables, filed in boxes. It's great, and once again it reflects a lived-in feel. The fact that they're all located on the upper level though seems intentional. The central podium is clear of clutter and organised, while the balcony, although is still being tidy, is a touch more dishevelled. It looks as though the Doctor deliberately likes to keep work and play separate, to a degree. So there you have it, my picks for the top 6 designs, and although subjective, I do hope I've managed to back up my picks to a degree. And I'm looking forward to seeing the new design, as let's face it, with a new lead writer and a new Doctor on the way, we're definitely going to get one. Predictions? Also, what's your favourite? You clicked on this video, so you likely have an opinion, so share it. And thanks again for watching. So until next video, I've been Rick, and I'll see you again. Thanks again, and goodbye.